Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your moon in Scorpio or moon in the 8th house. My name is Brandon. This is part of a much larger series I'm doing here on YouTube, where I go over specifically what planet is in what sign and house, order by order. So I have been going through every single planet, every single sign and house, and there's a playlist down below where I go through Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, all in every single planet and house prior to this one, which is going to be Aries through Libra. So I have everything prior to Scorpio and the 8th house in that playlist down there for you. And this video in specific is going to be about the moon. So it's a very lunar video, as well as the moon specifically in Scorpio. I will be talking about a little bit of different things at different times. So I have timestamps down below that you can check out where I talk about specifically the moon in Scorpio, as well as the moon in the 8th house. And then I also talk about the moon just in astrology in general, what you can expect when you're kind of connecting to the lunar energy and what to kind of work with in this regard. And so there are lots of things we're going to talk about in this video. This is one of my favorite placements, and I have a lot to say about this one. And it's definitely one that we're gonna have kind of a lot of conversations here. So before I kind of go into any of that, obviously, this is YouTube, so you guys understand that like getting a like, comment, share, subscribe is always going to help me out. And this is what I do for a living, so if you would do that, that would be great. That would help me out. There is also down below all my offerings, all my things like that. You can check those things out. But obviously watch this video first and see if you like how I speak, if you like how I talk about things, and then you can book with me or ask questions, things like that down there too. So yeah, so that is it for the little like pre stuff. And I do want to say, actually, before I go into anything in this video, a little bit of a trigger warning, just because of the fact this is a Scorpio moon video. I've had to put trigger warnings on these videos as of this week, like as of like, you know, the Scorpio week. I've had to kind of mention these, just because I think there's a lot of intensity around them. So just know that that's part of what we're going to be talking about. So just brace yourselves for triggers, and be aware that there's going to be some really intense stuff we're going to talk about. But I'm going to talk about it more over there in the actual Moon Scorpio portion. I just want to let that be known. Now, yeah, that's pretty much all the little introductory clerical stuff. Let's go into talking a little bit about what the moon means within astrology. So the moon in astrology is obviously a very safe, sacred space. It is a very sensitive point. It's a sensitive part of our chart. It is ruling and connected to all things related to caretaking, to collecting, to our emotional needs, our private life. It naturally rules the sign of Cancer, the 4th house. So it is a very like lunar, sensitive part of us. It has a lot to do with our mother and our ancestry as well. It has a lot to do with our emotional reactions, how we emotionally react, how we choose to emotionally react, how we emotionally regulate ourselves, like how emotional regulation is done, is a very much lunar quality. And kind of wherever the moon sits, we're going to have a lot of emotions invested into whatever specific sign and house that is. But the moon in Scorpio is going to, the moon specifically, I'm sorry, not the moon in Scorpio, but the moon is specifically going to be an area that's going to kind of wax and wane and kind of go up and down as we kind of learn to deal with it. So wherever the moon sits, just know that there is going to be some kind of fluctuations within that process, because that is what the moon is known for, is kind of that in and out kind of riding the waves kind of energy, as you can imagine there. The moon is a very, very sensitive point in our chart, and it is most likely seen when you are more intimate with someone, when you're more connected with someone, when you let them pass those kind of, I guess, solar walls, if you will, and you really connect to them on a deeper emotional level. That's kind of what's under the surface, is very much the moon, as well as just the private life. This is kind of like the mask that this person kind of slowly gets rid of. That's kind of what the moon represents, is like that mask coming off and that vulnerability. So it is a very vulnerable part of the chart, very sensitive part of the chart. And it really connects to all things relative to family and like familial and familiar kind of things. So there's a lot of habits that can be formed with the moon as well. That's why we talk about with new moons and full moons, these kind of new moons and full moon like manifestations, and those sorts of things are very lunar in nature, and kind of writing manifestations down or really trying to work with the energy of the moon. It's because it is a cyclical process, and it's very much very familiar to us. The moon is one of our primary bodies that we have worshipped throughout history on planet Earth, that we have always been able to kind of understand and work with. And so just knowing that the moon is part of our light that we really look towards. It's also the light at nighttime. So it's what helps us navigate darkness and navigate through, you know, our own like issues and things like that. So there is a sense of like privateness and kind of sensitivity to this as well, with the moon in general. The moon naturally rules Cancer, so if you are a Cancer sun or Cancer rising, this lunar placement is going to have a lot more importance to you than other things because you're going to be connected to that moon. Similarly as well, there is some importance when you are a Leo or Leo sun or Leo rising to connect to the lunar energy as well, just because those two bodies do kind of work hand in hand. So it is important if you know your moon sign to also know your sun sign. Most people know their sun sign, so I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, you already knew that. But the moon naturally rules Cancer, so therefore the sign opposite of its natural rulership is going to be a little bit uncomfortable, which is the moon in Capricorn. And then it's considered to be exalted in the sign of Taurus, which is a very high, you know, expression of the moon, very emotionally kind of steady. I did a whole moon Taurus video. You can check that out, of course. And then opposite of the exaltation is considered to be fallen, and that is what we have in this video today, which is the moon in Scorpio. So the moon is considered to be fallen in Scorpio. I'm going to talk about that a lot in the next portion, but there is a lot of differences that the moon will bring up when it is in Scorpio, and I pray for all of you in a way that is both like comically but also seriously, because you all have been through quite a lot. But that's a whole different thing. I'll get to that in a moment with the moon Scorpio part. But my point is the lunar energy is very, very sensitive. It's very, very vulnerable, and I want to allow everyone that is a moon Scorpio individual that wants to come across this video and watches this video to understand that their emotions are very valid. Everyone's emotions are valid. So the moon sign is going to have a lot of value in really how you understand your emotions and how you navigate those emotional landscapes and what those emotional landscapes look like, right? So that's kind of what it is. And obviously your moon sign is really important. So a lot of people, once they really start getting into astrology, this is kind of the first starting point is their moon sign. So if you are starting with this and you know your moon's in Scorpio or moon's in the 8th house, we're going to have a lot to talk about. So with that, let's go into what it means to have your moon specifically in Scorpio. Okay, so moon in Scorpio. This video is one that I have been looking forward to and dreading at the same time, because it is such a powerful placement. It is also such an intense placement. And because of that, it's something that needs to be handled with care and compassion first and foremost. So I want to let that be known right away, is that this lunar placement in Scorpio has been through a lot and therefore requires more compassion, more care. And I want to handle this in a very, very sensitive way, because I know that the moon in Scorpio is a very sensitive, very, very sensitive placement. And I want to, before I say anything more, is give a trigger warning, because some of the things I'm going to be talking about in the process of this video for moon Scorpios will be a little bit triggering or a lot of it triggering, okay? And I urge you, if you have this placement, to part of the process for the moon in Scorpio is to learn how to self-regulate. So if there's any point in time in this video that there is a trigger that comes up, I urge you to pause the video, reflect, sit with that feeling, and go from there, because this might be kind of a wild ride. So like I said, I want to handle this with care and compassion, because although I don't have a Scorpio moon, I have a lot of other Scorpio placements myself, and so I can understand this. I have a moon Pluto aspect, as well as I've been involved with a couple people that have moon in Scorpio, so I am aware of the emotional intensity that can be kind of felt in this sort of lunar placement. So before I go a little bit, I'm going to go one more step further in regards to the whole fallen moon conversation that you will find as you search on the internet about what Moon in Scorpio means. Because the Moon in Scorpio is a very, it has a lot of discourse online about how to understand it. And one of the things that astrologers use to understand placements is this idea of dignity. So some planets are dignified in certain signs. For example, signs that they rule. So for the example, for the moon, it rules Cancer, so it has dignity in Cancer. It's also exalted in Taurus. But then there's also like opposite versions of dignity, which are, detrimental or detriment or exile or fallen placements. And those are all terms that were given as we were understanding the kind of schema and the kind of system that is astrology. Now, I want to really talk about the fallen part of this, because the fallen moon, a lot of people speak on fallen placements as something that is so difficult to come back from. So difficult to come back from. And it has a lot of negativity surrounding it with this particular placement with the moon in Scorpio. And I want those of you that have this placement, that may be watching, to understand that although the moon is fallen in Scorpio, and all these people say how much the moon struggles in Scorpio and all these things, I want you to know that there's a lot more power that you have because of that struggle. And that's simply for the fact that that's really what Scorpio is all about, is about transmuting that struggle and turning it into something that is very, very powerful, very, very intense, and very, very pure, right? And the thing about Scorpio energy, it's very much about purification and getting rid of toxins, getting rid of karmic baggage, getting rid of anything that is dark and needs to be purified and purged. So if we put the purging archetype and this kind of really transformative archetype of Scorpio into the very personal and very sensitive and very soft planet of the moon, you can imagine how intense and polarized this individual may feel. Because when the moon's in Scorpio, the moon waxes and wanes. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down, right? But when the moon's in Scorpio, and I'm speaking on this more on the sense of like in natal chart, when the moon's in Scorpio, those ups and downs have a lot more like intensity to them. They're a lot more extremely felt. And the reasoning for that is because all Scorpio placements have to understand the full range of the expression of that planet, for good and for bad, right? They have to be completely elated on top of the world and feeling like, they just won $1 million and all these things. And they also have to feel at the absolute lowest and the absolute, end of their emotional kind of bandwidth. Now, just know that as you go through life as a Scorpio moon, you will understand the power of your emotions. And the sooner you dive into those emotions, the sooner you trust those emotions, the sooner you acknowledge and sit with those emotions, the better you're going to be. You need to sit with your feelings. Yes, they are going to be intense. Yes, they're going to be very, very heavy and very riddled with a lot of feeling. But I promise you that there is so much power and richness and gifts underneath all of that. It is so powerful. And yes, although I'm not a Scorpio moon, and technically I would not necessarily wish to be a Scorpio moon, in some moments, the really like the Scorpio moons that have gone that get it and that have gone through it and that understand, they are so influential. They are so influential. They're so powerful. They have so much emotional depth to them that they are capable of absolutely anything really in a lot of ways, because it's a lot about their emotional resiliency, their emotional empowerment, their emotional strength. And the moon in Scorpio needs to have emotional strength. It's required to have emotional strength with this placement, because you've had to literally fight for survival. When we see the moon with Scorpio, this is a very literally fighting for your lives. It can feel that way. It can feel like there is no sense of safety. There is no sense of security. And typically when moon Scorpios are born, there is some sort of fear from the mother, like a very intense fear of from the mother, and the birth circumstances that are really disorienting for the moon Scorpio individual, that can really just have them feel things in such an intense way. So, for example, while they're in labor with, well, not necessarily in labor, while they're pregnant with the moon Scorpio individual, they could have really intense mood swings. They could have had very, really like leaving an abusive relationship or leaving a really unfit environment. And there's this sense of fighting for something, fighting for security, fighting for their emotions. And typically with moon Scorpios, a couple of things are going to come up. One, you are, without a shadow of a doubt, your karmic cycle breaker of your family. The family karma in this placement is undeniable. It's very much there. You are going to be breaking karmic ties, breaking karmic patterns, and being someone who will not settle for emotional, surface level stuff. You're like, I want to purge this. I want to get rid of this. We can't have toxicity. We can't have all that stuff. Now, with the moon in Scorpio, I do want to bring up that just because you know what you shouldn't do when it comes to emotions, when it comes to emotional reactivity, when it comes to emotional, reactions, the most important thing with all Scorpio placements, but especially with the moon, is to not allow yourself, with the moon in Scorpio, to become that which harmed you, to become the emotionally abusive, emotionally neglectful, emotionally controlling, manipulative, overbearing, really, really intense and secretive person. Typically, it's the parent. Typically, it's the mother in specific. And also too, the thing with the moon Scorpio, and I didn't, it's also true for like Venus Scorpio, in a lot of ways. There can be some really interesting relationships with the public and with women in the public, especially when the moon Pluto is involved, moon Scorpio. This is where we see people that can have transformative relationships with the public, where they want, these are law enforcement officers, these are psychologists, these are people that they're able to, their emotional resiliency and their emotional strength and their ability to be the eye of the storm is beyond the shadow of a doubt. Obviously, they have to do the work, and that's the part that moon Scorpio needs to do. And like I said, and I'm probably going to say it multiple times in this video, get ahead of it and dive into that. Do not run from your feelings, because I promise you, they're going to come back, and they're going to come back even louder and bigger and stronger, and you have to sit with them no matter what. You cannot run from your feelings. You cannot run from yourself, no matter how much you try. And I understand, and I'm not trying to make light of the intensity of weight at which moon Scorpio individuals feel things. They feel things to such a degree that it can only be life or death feelings. And I don't mean this in the sense of like literal life or death, but it can feel like that, right? And it feels like every intense emotion, every trigger, which may happen more often than not, feels like I'm going to die from this. If I feel this feeling, I'm going to die, or I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose control. So there's this emotional control aspect as well with this. And it's all towards the same goal of emotional purification, of being able to break the karmic patterns of emotions that your family has and that the circumstances that you were born into have. So moon Scorpio individuals, they're going to have really, really intense relationships really intense private lives, family life, family dynamics. Some people will say that Moon Scorpio has quote unquote mommy issues, right? Um, and I can see that, but I don't like to just kind of blanket it like that because there's so much more. I think the Moon Scorpio's quote unquote issue is they feel things so deeply that their mother never did, or that their family never did, and their family never was capable of feeling, and they're coming in and they're like, all right, I have to feel this like intensely, like a lot, right? And so knowing that, I think, yes, there can be this quote unquote mommy issues, but at the end of the day, the quote unquote mommy issues really just comes from a lack of nurturing, a lack of understanding how to be cared for. And that can come from the mother not knowing how to care for you, or the birth circumstances or the family circumstances not having the resources to do that. Or it can, more importantly, just be that you have not been able to understand how to nourish yourself, how to feed yourself, how to take care of yourself, how to meet your own emotional needs. Because the Moon Scorpio, man, it has emotional control written all over it. But it's because that's the only way they know how to feel safe, is if they keep their emotions under control, or they keep their circumstances under control, or they keep their reactions under control, or they keep their secrets. They have secrets and secrets and secrets. They get a bunch of emotional secrets. And the thing is, with the Moon in Scorpio, similar to the Mars in Scorpio, you're going to get a lot of the more you're willing to do the work and be ethical with your feelings and your emotions, and kind of stand in that power and go towards the difficulty and go towards the transformation and the darkness, and not be fearful and be brave, the more you're willing to do that, the more you will have influence, the more you have power, the more you will have richness, really, really, really deep richness. Moon Scorpios, yes, you guys have had to go through hell and back many times, many, 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 many times in your life. But I can promise you that every time you come back from those, you bring another part of you back, and you retrieve more power, and you get more power, and you get more recognition, and you feel more validated, and you feel more secure and more assured, and more safe, right? Moon Scorpios need to experience the intensity of life and survive it cyclically, right? With the moon, they have to survive it up and down, up and down, and up and down, and have these moments where it consistently kind of happens for them to really know that they're safe. And that's really the only way they can do that. Now, the Moon Scorpio, can they fall into really, really difficult things that they use for coping mechanisms? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's probably one of the most common ones that I would see with things that are related to, addictions and things like that, because they're trying to so deeply purify their feelings, and sometimes they can only feel things when they're intoxicated, or when they're on substances, or whatever, altered state of consciousness, whatever it may be. And so there can be a very deep emotional kind of impulse that they need to learn how to control. And so there can be extreme reactions that they have to food as well. There's a sense of, when we see the moon Pluto, and especially like the moon Pluto in the second, or the moon Pluto with Venus sometimes even, or the moon with Saturn as well, can cause like eating disorders, can cause controlling of however one's making money, or however one's feeding oneself or sustaining oneself. So there could also be sugar things here with the moon, because they're trying to find comfort, and they do it in extreme ways. So with the Moon Scorpio, though, these are the people that would benefit the most from extreme cleanses. I'm talking about like absolute detoxes. Like, these are the ones that are like, I'm gonna take a 30-day fast of dopamine, or I'm gonna not drink alcohol for 3 months, or I'm gonna be sober, like that. Scorpio placements can like immediately become sober if they need to, or if they have an emotional impulse. Because the thing is, Scorpio wants you to experience a lot of empowerment and disempowerment, And with the moon, it's cyclical, and it happens all within 28 days. All within 28 days, the Scorpio is asked to evolve into another version of themselves when it's in the moon sign. But the thing is they are so, every day to them feels so intense and feels so deeply, and they need to understand that not every day is going to be great, but their bravery and their willingness to accept their feelings and dive into their feelings and understand their feelings in ways that no one else, well, other people can help them with those things, but they need to go through them and have the pain and have the suffering and have that, so that they themselves understand their own purpose of their own pain and suffering. And I know it sucks to say that to anyone that's been through something, and I'm not trying to lay light of the amount of trauma that Moon and Scorpio individuals have undergone, because these are the ones that have no other understanding of how to emotionally regulate. And so that's why they do extreme things. That's why they might fall into darker emotional spaces. This is a placement that is so intensely feeling that they can't, until they really dive into it and trust the process and understand the spiritual implications of it and kind of lean into the occult and lean into the energetics of it all and all of that things, and however it resonates with them, whether it's astrology, whether it's tarot, whether it's Reiki, energy healing, whatever it may be, the sooner they do that, the sooner it'll be easier for them to navigate all these intense feelings. These are the ones that make amazing psychics, amazing witches, amazing occultists, amazing psychologists, amazing these are the ones that, like, if you are at a, and it's obviously really dependent on the Moon and Scorpio's like own level of their own evolution and their own like emotional maturity and their own emotional intelligence. But the Moon in Scorpio has such a large range of emotional intelligence. But the thing is, depending upon that range is like, I would say, yeah, go to them for like emotional support, because they're really they're gonna accept all of your intense emotions. They're the ones that are gonna let you have the big emotional reactions and sit there and understand that that's part of the process, because they've done it themselves. They've cried and they've screamed and they've purged those emotions at late nights or early mornings or all day, and they've had panic attacks. They've had all these things happen to them. So they understand and they're accepting of the fact that that's part of the human nature. That's part of what we have to acknowledge. And that's the thing. I think the Moon Scorpio, they've had so much of their life that was never acknowledged on that deep of a level, or even at all. And that's something you'll see, especially if you have like the Moon Scorpio with Saturn, where it like wasn't really acknowledged. It was kind of cold. But with Moon Scorpio, it requires that. It requires, for their own emotional safety and security and their own emotional well-being and their health and like their mental health, their spiritual health, their emotional health especially, needs to feel these things. So like I said, and I've already said it again, is run into your feelings, run towards them. And I understand that they're very scary. But you've survived everything prior to this. You've survived all of the prior potential panic attacks that you may have had, or the prior sleepless nights or anxiety or worry or concern or mental or emotional stress and control and abuse and all these things. You've survived those things. And you've brought yourself through those moments. So know that you can do those whenever they happen, and there's power in them. There's power in survival. And especially when you've survived the depth that a Scorpio placement will bring you to. Come on. Like, you've survived the depth and darkness of what could be considered literal hell for a lot of people. Whether it's, completely destitute, completely homeless, completely, ill, and at a point where there's no hope, there's nothing, but all you can do is feel those feelings and purge those things and release it and transform it. And it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I know this. I know the Scorpio moons watching this know this deep down. And for all the different reasons that are all valid, by the way, for why you may not be going towards those feelings, is because it's scary and all those things. Like, it's valid. It makes sense. Your brain is literally designed to protect you from things that are a threat. And with Moon in Scorpio, if there's something that is considered to be a threat to you, and especially a threat to anything that you consider family and you consider worth protecting, you will channel those emotions really, really deeply. You will protect, you will fight, and you will make sure that there is no, there's nothing left, really. And when I say there's nothing left, I'm regarding more of like the emotional connection. Like, they're very all or nothing. And also, as well, the Moon Scorpio can definitely have a, like I said, really intense relationships with the public, really intense relationships with their family, of course. But it's because they're feeling all these undercurrents that they might not have the words or the experience or the depth of understanding of themselves to be able to navigate. They don't know how to navigate those intense feelings that are being brought up, those intense triggers, those intense reactions from other people, but that they're so subtly aware of. They're not able to do that all the time until they learn that. Then they'll be phenomenal. They'll be at the top of the emotional intelligence ladder. They are the ones that have had to learn emotional intelligence, and these are very much the street smarts people. They can't be book smart for other reasons, obviously, but these are very street smart people. These are people that have gone through emotional turmoil to the point that they're able to recognize emotional abuse, lies, manipulation from like a mile away. But once again, with Scorpio, it's really about making sure that you're utilizing that emotional intelligence for good things and not to harm or control or manipulate or any of those things. Because the Moon Scorpio placements in general, wants you to make sure that you are not creating the same cycle that you're trying to break. So make sure that you're not passing on your emotional karma to other people, and make sure you are very aware of what emotional karma you are bringing into other relationships, and also what baggage. Emotional baggage for Moon Scorpio and Scorpio placement in general is a lot. But the Moon Scorpio has a lot to unpack because they're trying to unpack their entire family lineage. So be patient with yourself, right? And if you love someone, the Moon in Scorpio, be patient with them while they're figuring that out, while they're understanding what that process looks like for them, while they're understanding their own emotions. Because once again, they go through a wide range within a month's time. They really, really do. The Moon in Scorpio is a very, very psychically in tuned placement. One of the best for anyone that is a healer, an astrologer, an occultist, a reader, a psychologist, anyone that is a medium, anyone that's very, very deeply in tuned with psychological and energetic systems or surgery or energetic surgery is Moon Scorpio. They're going to have it, right? However, like I said, it's about making sure that you're using it for the right reasons and making sure you're empowering others from the space of bravery and just belief and giving people belief and something to really, really connect to. The Moon in Scorpio is a very potent energy, very potent, very, very, very extreme. There's also, like I said, there's extreme relationships with food as well. There's some interesting digestive things as well here. Also similar to like Moon in Virgo, there's digestive stuff. But the Moon here is one of those placements that you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of negative talk about it. And I really urge you, if you have your Moon in Scorpio, to be softer on yourself, please. Please. For those of us that understand and see the value in going through the emotional depths and darkness and stuff, please don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't quit on yourself. Yes, it's going to feel like hell a lot. It's going to feel like emotional abandonment, emotional neglect, emotional manipulation, but that does not mean that the people that are around you don't love you and don't want to help you. Because a lot of the time with the Moon, we're seeing other people and the reactions that other people are having to us as a mirror. Because the Moon is just it's another light, it's another illumination, right? But it's an illumination of a much deeper part of us, a much more private part of us, right? And the Moon in Scorpio illuminates parts of us that we might not be aware of, and most times we're not. And understand that a lot of the time with a Moon Scorpio individual, what you're seeing in someone else, and I'm not saying don't trust your intuition, that's not what I'm saying at all. But as you're learning that process and learning to trust your intuition, sometimes, actually a lot of the time, most times, the Moon Scorpio individual is going to have to go through a very large deconditioning process to make sure that they're not simply projecting their own emotional intensity and their own emotional trauma from their own circumstances, whether it was their family and that abusive relationship, whatever it was, and projecting that onto others. Once they do the deconditioning process and they understand where their trauma comes from, why it's there, why they're reacting that way, why they have the impulse, why they have that desire. Once again, this is a placement that can have be like the emotional intelligence to like the nth degree, to like the infinity degree. They are the epitome of emotional intelligence. But also, if they don't utilize their power, if they don't utilize the depth that the Scorpio moon wants to experience, and I'm like I said, I'm not trying to minimize the difficulty that comes with this placement, because I know it's hard. I know it's hard. I don't have it, but I know it's very, 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 very hard. And be patient with yourself as you go through this. Survival is very hard. Surviving and trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, trusting your feelings, especially if you're a male with the moon in Scorpio, that's a little bit harder because men are more conditioned to connect to their solar, their sun sign and their Martian sign, not as much their lunar nature. So understand there's a lot of intensity that you can have, and you have a lot of emotional secrets. You have a lot of secrets. A lot of things will go to your grave, both your secrets and people's secrets. There's a lot of stuff that you're just going to take, and it's going to be locked in a vault. It'll be gone forever. Lots of skeletons too. Lots of skeletons in the closet too with the moon Scorpio. So it's about awareness of that too. Like a lot of times Scorpio placements think that feeding the darkness is going to, I'm sorry, talking about those things that are hidden and talking about those things that are dark feeds them and makes them stronger, when in actuality it just illuminates them in a way that allows you to see them more clearly. And that's coming from a Scorpio sun to a Scorpio moon, right? So that's kind of my perspective there. Is I think it's about being able to see and look at those things and look at the power that those things have. Once again, like, it's very obvious that I'm a Scorpio sun talking to a Scorpio moon at this moment, like, because I'm saying, yes, those emotions, those emotional reactions, like, you don't, not saying don't trust them, but just look at them, right? Analyze them. And I think that's something that Scorpio moons struggle with, because when they think that they're, by acknowledging the feeling or acknowledging the emotional impulse of toxicity that they might want to do, that they are perpetuating that. But what's more important is acknowledging that, pausing, right? Pausing and not necessarily acting on it, and then seeing where it comes from, seeing how you want to deal with it, seeing how you want to deal with your emotions. Because the thing about Moon Scorpio too, there's this aspect of quite literally swallowing poison, in like a metaphorical sense, in the sense of like, I won't speak on these feelings and they're going to kill me because I don't talk about them. Like, there's this sense where if you don't get your feelings out, they can really harm your body. They can really like push down your energy field in a way that is really, really toxic. So that's why, like I said, there's a lot about getting rid of toxins that are really important for Scorpio placements overall. But the moon Scorpio, this is one that affects them the most. It affects their constitution the most. These are the ones that have to consistently do fasting and consistently do detoxes and cleanses and really intense sorts of things. So just know that if you have this placement, detox is your friend. It really is. And emotional expression is also your friend. And you have, and you need to become your friend. You need to, as a Scorpion individual, if you have this placement, you need to become friends with those dark parts of you, become friends. And I'm not saying like in the sense of like working with them and using them and being a nasty, vindictive, evil person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying befriend them, understand them. Think about your emotions as a very like harmed animal, or a very harmed, child that is having a fit, that is doesn't know how to regulate their emotions, and they're doing anything they can, and it is destructive. Right? The moon Scorpio, these are the ones that if they don't get their emotions out, they will explode. They will. That's why they need emotional outlet, like consistently emotional outlet, because if they don't get that, they will they'll see red and they will emotionally explode or implode. And it's not pretty when that happens. That's why they need emotional outlets, but like consistently. Because once again, the moon is a constantly moving body. So wherever the moon sits, you're going to want to consistently do those things. So like get into a habit of emotionally regulating yourself and find emotional intense things to do that are healthy, right? Emotionally healthy things to do, emotionally intelligent things to do, emotionally nourishing things to do, as well as just getting used to the cycles of your feelings and understanding that some days you're going to have good feelings, some days you're not, right? Some days you're going to feel top of the world, some days you're not, and that's okay. And everything is temporary. And that's when the moon is really good at reminding us once we're willing to sink into it and understand that. That panic attack will only last at least for a maximum of 20 minutes. If that. Yes, in that 20 minutes, will it feel like absolute hell? Yes, right? But it's only 20 minutes. In the grand scheme of our entire life, that's like a literal second, not even, right? And in the same vein, think about, and it's so funny I'm saying this, but think about the process of when you throw up. When your body is literally doing what it needs to do to purge and throw up, that lasts what feels like such a long amount of time. Yes, it might be, depending upon what you're throwing up, it might be, anywhere from a couple minutes to a couple hours. But it passes because your body knows what to do to heal. And the irony in that is that during the Scorpio season that I'm recording this, on the Scorpio new moon, I literally, like, swear to God, had food poisoning, which is so on brand for this. And I was like, I get it. The moon's in Scorpio. This is like perfect time to do, like, literally it was energetically purging, and physically purging. And it was that process of just literally trusting and knowing that this is part of life. And yes, did it feel like hell? Absolutely. Absolutely. I never want to go back there. No one wants to go back there, right? And that's hard to understand that, like, if I knew that every single month I would have to throw up like that, oh my gosh, no. Nope. Pack it up, I'm out, right? And that's the thing, a Scorpio moon, it can feel that way. It can feel that way, where it's every single month, every single week, every single environment, like, feels like, on some level, it can be that intense. And that's terrifying. So I understand that. I get it. And I can only imagine with everyone's trauma that they've all dealt with, and I know that Moon Scorpios have dealt with a lot. And your mother and your family unit and your ability to feel your feelings is such an important thing to work through, and you are the karmic breaker. I can guarantee you are the one, if not multiple ones in your family, that are breaking that cycle purely. And it's hard to purify such a large amount of ancestral lineage, but those that have Moon in Scorpio, Pluto, 4th house, have a lot of power there, and you do. Lean into that power. Trust that power. Trust it. Trust your feelings. Trust your intuition. But more importantly, understand where your feelings are coming from, what those feelings are. Put words to them. Feel them. Befriend them. They're not going to kill you. Your emotions are not going to kill you. It's the lack of addressing them that will. It's your lack of nurturing yourself and taking care of yourself emotionally that you need to do that will, right? You need to take care of your feelings, take care of yourself, feel soft, feel safe. You need to feel safe. And I understand that sometimes Moon Scorpios have really bad coping mechanisms, right? And it's hard to get out of those when you fall into them. But I promise you that there's a journey and there's a story in that struggle. There is. Above anything else, there is an important part of you, very deeply important part of you, that needs to be purified and needs to be empowered and needs to be seen and expressed. And yes, it's going to be very personal and very private and very difficult, because that is how much power you have within you. It is so untapped that it is so limitless. And that's what I want Moon Scorpios to understand. Like, I love you guys. I love this placement so much. Like, that's like I said, I'm like, I wouldn't really ask for a moon Scorpio placement, but like, I have all the other Scorpio placements pretty much. Like, I understand Scorpio placements pretty well because I have it. But like, I just wish that I could show you all what the power in your emotions is like. You have the ability to transform not just your life, but so many other people's lives, because of the fact the moon fucking rules the public. It literally rules the public. It rules your relationship with society. And you can create a lot of change when you're willing to be emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent and face those feelings and decondition from all the trauma and darkness and bullshit and abuse and neglect and all those things that you've dealt with. Understand that you have a depth within you that is so beautiful. So, yeah, that's all I really want to say there with the moon in Scorpio. Yeah, that's all I'm really going to say there. Because otherwise I'll go on this forever, and I could talk about you guys forever. And I'm really, if you guys have the moon in Scorpio, I would love to hear your side of the story and how it has been for you, and if this helped. Honestly, I want to know if this helped you, because the moon Scorpio, I love getting my moon Scorpio clients and friends and things, because I see you guys, right? As a sun Scorpio, I see you in a way that is, I hope, validating. And I hope that anyone that has moon Scorpio understands this and walks away from this video validated and seen and loved and cared for and comforted, because that's what y'all really need, is comfort and care, right? So the last thing I want to say really quick about the moon Scorpio, kind of a minor thing that I haven't said, but I've been saying in all the other videos as well, is if you have your moon in Scorpio, look to your Mars placement to get you a better idea of what specifically your moon is looking, how your moon is looking to get those emotional needs met. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but if you have that Mars placement and anything prior to Scorpio or even in Scorpio, make sure to check out those videos in the playlist down below as well for your Mars placement, so a little better idea for you to kind of figure out how you specifically want to go after your goals. So that's it for the moon Scorpio. Like I said, I love you guys. If you guys like this video, please like it, please comment. Let me know what your story has been like, as vulnerable or as invulnerable as you want to be, or invulnerable. Well, it's an interesting word choice, but lack of vulnerability you want to share, right? However much you want to share or not. I will love it all, right? I appreciate you. I love you. I hope you moon Scorpios are doing well, and I would love to hear from more of you, because I love you guys so much. I love my moon Scorpios. You guys are great. So that's it for that one. I'm going to go into the next part, which is specifically about the moon in the 8th house. So we have the moon in the 8th house. This is going to be a very emotionally transformative place. It's going to be a lot of family, lots of family legacy here. Lots of family connections, family relationships. There's something here a lot about family heirlooms and connecting to families' sort of resources, right? Because the 8th house is all about other people's resources, other people's money, other people's finances, other people's psychology, their intimacy, their baggage, their issues, their stuff. There's very moon in the 8th, or just 8th house in general. We put the moon here. This is a very personal part of our chart. This is a very private part of our chart. This is a very sensitive part of our chart. And we put the moon here. It is very, very sensitive to other people's opinion of us, other people's connections to us intimately. How intimately connected we are to other people is a very, very important thing for the moon in the 8th house. We strive, if you have the moon in the 8th house, you strive for emotional connection in a very deep way, and emotional power, right? Similar to moon in Scorpio. It has a very similar tendency with that, but moon in the 8th is more on specifically how am I going to connect with someone else? How am I going to merge with someone else? How am I going to get involved with someone else? And it can be not just on the financial part of it, and not just on the emotional part of it, but on like a spiritual level. The moon in the 8th can be a very deeply spiritually connected person, where they are having very deep spiritual bonds, whomever they feel like they're connecting to intimately. And I don't mean intimacy like a little one night stand. That's not intimacy. I'm talking about bearing your soul to people, right? When you have the moon in the 8th, you're going to cyclically go through times where you want to connect very deeply to someone and then cannot not connect as much, right? And you have to honor all those phases, right? That's the thing with the moon. You got to honor every phase that it comes and goes in. And in the 8th house, it's pretty intense. And it can be, this really emotionally volatile space where you're really trying to connect to people, you're really trying to trust people, you're really trying to work with people, and you kind of always have these emotional kind of battles, right? To some degree, you're going to want to look to see what the moon is doing by like sign and aspect and things like that for a better idea of like what to really expect with this placement, because the moon here is going to work in so many different ways in so many different signs. And I said this I think I said this in the Sun Scorpio video, but I've done most of these moon videos, meaning like I've done the moon in now both Martian signs, both Venus signs, both Mercury signs, and obviously in Cancer and Leo. So I've done all of those. So if you have your moon in any of those placements, there's a playlist down below that you can check out to watch that specific portion to get more context, because I'm not going to go as deep as I would want to into every single one of these. But I will be going and touching on a little bit about what the moon means in each kind of sign in the 8th house, just to get a better idea, and just to kind of take a glimpse into what specifically this means for those of you that have the moon in certain signs in the 8th house. So moon in a Martian ruled sign, this is going to be the emotionally brave ones in a lot of ways. These are the ones that go towards specifically working with other people for means of getting what they want. There's a lot of impulse control here, a lot of very deep impulse control as well. They need to understand their emotional impulses from their family in a lot of ways. There's a lot of intimacy issues that are mirrors of the intimacy issues from the family system. That's typical for most things, but with the moon in the 8th, that's just something that we'll see. And the moon in Aries, specifically in the 8th, is like impulsively like, I'm gonna try something new, I'm gonna be with someone new. And this is someone who maybe they choose to be in a family that is nothing like their family, and it causes a lot of strife and intense differences. And in the same vein, it can go the whole other direction with moon in the 8th, not necessarily in Aries, but in other signs in the 8th. We could see like arranged marriages as well, where there's like the family provides you with the expectation of shared resources, right? Your family literally gives you inheritances. There's a lot of inheritance energy here too. There's a lot of family inheritances with the moon in the 8th. Moon in a Venus ruled sign. I've seen moon in Scorpio. Like, this is the video for that. So there's a lot there. But there's a lot of intensity there. Yeah, lots of like expectations from the family, like a lot of expectations from the family with that one. Now, the moon in a Venus ruled sign, so either Taurus or Libra, this is going to have more of the like waiting on a financial kind of gain from the family, or waiting on specifically inheritances. The moon in Taurus does really well here, obviously, so there's like a lot of financial support. Maybe your family's able to help you get loans, or someone in the family who's in banking. There might be some family banking connections, or just family counseling connections, like someone who has a therapist as a mother or something might be a thing. That also could be true for moon in Scorpio too. I've actually seen that. I've seen someone who has a moon in Scorpio and their mother is I've actually seen a couple where I've seen their mother is a lawyer, their mother is a therapist, which is really interesting. I've seen kind of a wide range of it. Mother's a doctor, because the moon in Scorpio and the moon in the 8th their mother specifically and their family is just powerful in some way, shape, or form, or disempowering in some way, shape, or form. It could be like a lot of stuff that you have to carry of expectations. So just know that. That's also, like I said, moon and Venus there in the 8th. There's like a hidden expectation, or an expectation that you need to prove something, prove your value in a lot of ways. So that's something there. Moon and Libra in the 8th can have the same thing, except this is way more relational. Obviously, this is way more of like the marriage partner difficulty, right? Getting a partner that doesn't agree with your own family dynamics, and your own kind of in-laws are going to be really interesting for that, because the moon in the 8th does rule in-laws, so there's some interesting sensitivities around that for sure. Yeah, there could be a lot of money too with the moon in the 8th. Lots of money from in-laws. Now, moon in Mercury ruled signs, so Gemini or Virgo. surgeon energy for sure, financial advisor, making contracts, working with the public to help them understand how to put words to their feelings, right? Psychologists, therapists, doctors, there's a lot there with those things. Horror writers, that's really interesting, but like people that work in medical industries as well. That's also seen as like if we have like the moon in Pisces in the 8th, there could be definitely like working in medicine or working in hospitals. But it's the same thing with the moon in the 8th in general. You could see that too with the moon in Gemini and Virgo. This would be more like working in like the front desk of a hospital, or working in like some really intense occult energy as well, because the 8th house is also occult things and secrets. So it could be like working with the secrets, working with banking, and there's like a lot of banking investor stuff with this one. Same with the moon, interestingly enough, in the next one, which is the moon in Leo. There can be more of investment banking. There's something about speculation, and there's definitely something here actually more so with trading the markets. There's some very interesting things with market trades here with the moon in the 8th in Leo in specific. And same in the same way if we put like Scorpio in the 5th and have the moon there, like there is this like interesting connection because the moon is literally about trends and trading, and the markets is ruled by the moon, because it's like the public's, kind of ups and downs. So knowing that, moon in Leo can have some very interesting speculatory things, very interesting betting. There could be some interesting stuff with that for sure. Moon in Cancer in its own sign in the 8th. This is good. It's a little more sensitive than not, so there's a lot of like overly fearful of the family loss and the family transformation process, meaning like when people die, which are inevitable. The 8th house, death is inevitable. And it's funny because I spent this whole video thus far not even talking about death, which is such an 8th house theme. But the moon in the 8th house in Cancer, there's almost like a very... It's hard with the moon in Cancer. I chuckle because it's so sensitive to the changes in a way that it understands them, but it understands a bit too much, and it can be a little really, really overly sensitive and very fearful of the loss of the loss of someone, right? Yeah. The loss of someone and just I don't want to get into that, but there's like family heirlooms here. There's that's a lot of it too, like family responsibilities, family heirlooms, family transformations, family psyche as well. And there's also, like I said, there's something with working with the public too, real estate investing. That's a good one there. Also with moon and Venus there too. That's another thing. Moon in Jupiter's world signs. So these are the ones I have not done yet, but this is moon in Sag and Pisces. These are going to be the foreign relationships. These are also going to be the ones that can kind of work better with like teaching about things. So going to school for what their family wanted to go to school for. These can be, with moon and Sag, this is more of like this is also speculatory because it's another fire sign. Kind of all of them. All the fire moons have like a speculation to them and kind of like a risk to them. So there could be some financial risks with the moon in Sag. This is someone who would really benefit with getting there's almost like a loan going back to school. There's something around that. Like loan going back to school is very interesting with the moon in Sag in the 8th, or going and being in a lot of debt for like legal problems. Can also be true for moon in Pisces, but that's for different reasons. Moon in Pisces is more of legal. There's a lot of medical debt, I feel like, with this one. There's a lot of medical debt with the moon in Pisces in the 8th. Very, very niche thing, but like it's just debt is part of life. There is also a deep desire to connect to something spiritual with the moon and Jupiter connections in the 8th, and there's a deep transformative process in that. There's a lot of power that the moon does in the 8th, and Sag and Pisces, they're both searching for something and teaching something and learning from something. And so these are like going to school to be a psychologist because their parents never were, or being the firstborn person in their family to get a master's degree, right? That's what you'll see here with moon and Sag, and also with moon and Pisces to some degree, but moon and Pisces is a little bit more lost in all the things of their family in a lot of ways. Like I said, I'm not trying to go too deep into these because brevity, but and just because I'm gonna do those videos later. But and then finally moon in Capricorn and Aquarius. This is where we'll see the getting the family business and the stress of that. And this is where we'll also see the intimacy stuff. It's funny, I hadn't really talked about the intimacy stuff throughout most of these little private, like little mini examples here, but the moon in Capricorn, there's in the 8th, there's a lot of like intimacy stuff going on here. Yeah, a lot of intimacy barriers up to the age of 30 or so. And then there's also a business here. There's some business around making money with the public too, with the moon in Capricorn. That's like a whole, there's like a moon in Capricorn, but that's what it is. Moon in Aquarius, my moon sign. The moon in Aquarius, interestingly enough, if this is your placement, you have it in the 8th house. This is actually your chart ruler, so be aware of that, and aware that you are being brought to transform a lot of trends, a lot of things, a lot of different relationships with stuff. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about here with the moon in Aquarius in the 8th, but I will save it for when actually the moon is in Aquarius and I do that video. But moon in Aquarius has in the 8th, this is the getting a lot of financing for group projects and AI and working with technology, working with a bunch of different like investors, and this is really good for investments in a lot of ways, in trendy investments, and also similarly in trades, in trading. So even though like Leo rules trades, so does Aquarius. Leo and Aquarius both kind of rule markets in some sort of way, or speculatory stuff. So there is some connection with both of those on both ends of being connected to the collective versus being connected to like themselves. So the moon here can also be really good for investments and banking and working in those areas, because they want to connect to something that is futuristic and is trendy and makes them feel like they belong to something, and so they want to belong very deeply. So this is also someone who could have very, 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 very interesting hangups around intimacy and connection. Yeah, very, very likely with that one. Yeah, there's an interesting quality there with the moon in Aquarius in general, but then in the 8th, there's like a really intense relationship with the public that needs to be understood and purified. So it's kind of very interesting friends, very powerful friends as well. But that's a different conversation for another day. But yeah, that's just kind of little stuff with the moon in the 8th. That's kind of like little mini tangents here. But at the end of the day, with the moon in the 8th, there is overall like a very ultimately trying to connect to intimacy, connect to other people, connect to their values, their emotions, their parts of you, and knowing who to get involved with, both financially, physically, intimately, and spiritually and energetically, because there is a lot of energetic mixture here with the moon. And the family unit is without a shadow of a doubt going to be very, very intense. It's true for anybody, but with the moon in the 8th, it makes it so that those really intense changes in the family, even just like moving, doesn't necessarily have to be like a loss or a death, like even an upgrade or a downgrade of a house or whatever, or changing, and going to stay with grandma for a week or whatever. Those can feel really intense, and those can have a lot of context in them for you. So just be aware of that as well. If you have your moon in the 8th, there's like a lot of family context when things really start shifting in really intense ways that are really going to ramp up. But there's a really deep desire to trust other people. That's also true for Moon Scorpio, but you need to learn how to trust and trust the process that's like cyclically happening with the moon there. I love the moon signs. I really do. The moon it's funny because I sleep on the moon. Like I don't really talk about the moon that much personally, but the more I do these videos specifically towards the moon, the more I learn a lot about the way she works and the way she connects to things. And yeah. The other thing too, oh my gosh, this is so random, but because the moon rules collecting, this is so random. But the moon in Scorpio, this is like, I hope moon Scorpios are watching this still, because you should be if you're moon Scorpio. But there's some interesting relationships with collecting things, like extreme collections with the moon in Scorpio. And the moon in the 8th has this as well, but it's like collecting intimate moments, collecting people's secrets, collecting, investments, right? There's something like that. Yeah, but just interesting because there's like a hoarding. That's what it was, a hoarding aspect with the moon in Scorpio. There's potentialities for that too. I should have mentioned that earlier, but yeah, forgot. But anywho, it is what it is. This is how the video comes out. It's how it is. I don't really do any edits for this. I just kind of talk off the cusp and I just let it rip. And I love it. And I love what I do. I love being able to talk about this stuff. But yeah, so I want you to know that, like, if you have your moon in the 8th house, if you have your moon in Scorpio, this video has been hopefully illuminating for you, where it's been able to help you see more of your own feelings, your own emotions, your own intensity, your own power, and your own ability to connect to people in a way that is very, very deep and very transformative and very empowering and very important. Moon in the 8th can also have a lot of things that help them with like psychology and being therapists as well. The 8th house is a really great gift for that. That's what you'll see with 7th and 8th house kind of stuff. There's a lot of gifts around those things. So just know that's part of it. So yeah, so thank you so much for watching this. This is my favorite video. I love doing this. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope this video helped literally anybody. And if this video did help you, please put a like down below. Please put a like, comment, share, subscribe. All those things are going to help me. This is what I do. I love doing this. And I love being able to help people. And if you're interested in anything with me, like how I talk, like how I read, feel free to put all my offerings are down below. And then of course, obviously there is my playlist down below too. We're going to talk about all the different videos, where all the different placements and all those things. So feel free to check that out below as well. If you want to learn more about the other placements that you may have. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this really, really intense Scorpio Moon 8th house video. And I wish you all the best, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.